I'm muting you. All right. How's everyone doing today? Welcome to H&D Abroad. I am Herman. Glad to have you here today. It's always an honor to be able to come in and share a little bit of our story and something different and new and encouraging to our audience. For those who don't know us here at H&D Abroad, my lovely wife Dee and I share our journey to move abroad, and we do that by our desire to help Black couples to see moving abroad as a plan A for generational wealth and healthy living. So if that sounds good to you, we ask that you would hit the like on this video, as always, to subscribe to our channel, of course, so that you become a part of our ongoing community, and hit the notification bell so that you always know when we are going live. It is, of course, Man Monday, and that's why I'm floating out here all bobblehead by myself. But I am not alone today. I have an honored guest with me, and I'm going to bring him right in because no need stalling. You jump right in, and there we go. This is my good friend, Fred Bussey. What's going on, my man?
Hey, what's going on, Herman? It's good to be here, man.
Absolutely, absolutely. So a little bit of insight to our guest this evening and his importance to me. Fred and I met probably going on 34 years ago. We were juniors in high school, and we showed up to what would later become our alma mater as visiting high school students to the college campus during the what was called college days back at that time. And they had so many of us visit, they didn't have rooms for us, and we slept on the floor in sleeping bags in the chapel, and and uh, and made a connection. And we've been and showed up 2 years later as freshmen of the class of 1992, and here we are, 32 years later. Man, old men.
Hey, speak for
Old man.
yourself.
Yeah, old man. And time keeps on marching. And
Hey, man.
it's always an honor to have you here, my boy. It's always good to spend time with you.
Likewise, bro. I'm really honored that you have me on the show. I love what you and your lovely wife have been building in terms of your audience, and the topic matter is it's it's increasingly becoming more and more relevant, right? So uh, I think we're gonna have an interesting discussion. We will do our best not to get canceled tonight.
Yeah. Yeah, this program, as always, is for the grown and sexy. So
Mm, mm,
we are adults here, and we're going to pour in
mm,
adult like. Um, in well, yeah, I'll say this first. I want to be able to say here in a live format in front of people who don't know us that it is an honor to call you my friend. I have, and I've said this to you directly, I have had the opportunity to continue to watch you grow in your personal story, in your business ventures, and and hearing the influence that you are having on the moving world. Having you here tonight is about talking about the realities of just making life move in a way that is authentic to you as a person, to you as a man, and to you as a Black man.
mm.
So, first, I want to open it up, give you an opportunity to introduce yourself, tell a little bit about what you're doing in your life, and a little bit about maybe some of your business, and then we'll kind of shift the gear from there.
Well, thanks again for having me, man. Again, I can say I can echo every sentiment that you share with me. I have always held you in high regard, and it's an honor to be able to have friends. I think one of the things that we take for granted in college is that we'll always have the friends that we had in college, and that we will always be friends with the people that we know. And increasingly, while the number of people that you know of may grow, the people that you can truly call friends and stay connected to in a deep and meaningful way continues to shrink. And I think
Hmm.
that probably has a lot to do with what we'll talk about tonight. But in terms
Absolutely.
of that, I just want to acknowledge you and really validate you for that, the place that you hold in my life. Um, as for myself, my name is Fredrick Douglass Bussey, as you can see below. I am the founder, principal of Icon Status, which is a business advisory firm. We advise entrepreneurs on growing their business, on being able to scale a business that grows without them, so that they can work less hours every week and multiply their profits in the meantime. That being said, my full time job is being a father and a husband.
Hmm.
I've been married for 14 years to my lovely Delianne, and I have three amazing children: 12, 7, and 5, Nev, Sire, and Alea. And so they have taught me a lot and filled my life with a lot of laughter and joy, some tough lessons, and a continuous reason for growth, as a man and
Hmm.
as an individual. So that's it in a nutshell. That's who I am. That's what I'm up to. I think that's enough. Let's get to it.
All right. And we'll make sure all of that information is in the description. So if you all want to reach out to Fred to get your businesses moving, he can make himself available to you. Take a minute to stop and say hi to those who are watching with us today. I see KK. Good to see you. Homemade. And our friends, I hope that's my boy said over there, Agent Grateful. And I'm glad that you all are here. I see other eyes. If you are here, let us know you're here. Remember that this is a conversation, not just between Fred and I, but between us as a community and our guests today.
Mm,
All right. So our title is Being the Best Man You Can Be. Um, in and of itself, it's a broad title because it, depending on from which angle you are sliding into your whatever part of your life, you can come at
mm,
that from many different places in many different ways. What what does being a man mean to you?
mm. So you're going to ask me to answer a broad question with an even more broad question.
Absolutely,
Uh,
absolutely. Got to dig a hole with a hole.
I think being a man is one of the most awesome responsibilities and privileges that I could think of. And it's in this day and age, it's actually something that you're not necessarily supposed to say that you're proud of. I
Hmm.
don't think that, I don't think whether you're a man or a woman, I think that whatever your calling, um, in life, whatever you were created with, created to be, I think that that in and of itself is the calling, right? And so there's different packages that comes in. And being a man carries a particular sort of weight, but I have only grown to appreciate it more and more since I've come down this path of development. I think it's really a privilege because there is a mantle of leadership, there is a mantle of responsibility that is can be a heavy weight to bear. But I think that as a man, when you embrace it, you will also discover all the ways that you are uniquely qualified to be able to realize the potential that you have and to really be able to shepherd those who are under your care, those who are in your circle, to be able to kind of lead them. Uh, I think talking to you, you're going to bring out all the big words in me, but I think it's special, and I don't take it for granted. I think God chose men to be men for a reason, and we owe it to him to fulfill that calling. So that's what it means for me.
Do you think that the general status of what is a man is different from the concept of being a black man?
Mm. I think the world has made it necessary. There's a different element. Um, so if we're going to say that black men are the original man, right?
Okay.
Then no. The
Mm.
essence of being a man is everything that a black man is supposed to be. But in this world today, there's a particular brand of manhood that is called upon by us in a very particular way. And there's just no getting around it, right? There's an extra responsibility. There's an extra level of scrutiny. There are unwanted and many times unmerited labels that are placed on us. And yet, I think that if you embrace it, you don't shy away from it. It actually becomes a crown you wear instead of a cross. If you're able to navigate that path, because the fact of the matter is, being a man comes with its own particular challenges anyway. As being a woman does, but we have a particular set of challenges. I don't think that being a black man makes that any easier.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think that I share a level of pride that I think that many men in general may not necessarily, because there's not a particular sort of identity that goes along with it. I come from a great lineage, right? As do you, of black men,
Mm-hmm.
whose stories are not famous, who are not known to the outside world, but they survived,
Mm-hmm.
right? And in a world that in many ways did not want them to exist, survival is the most defiant thing that you could do.
Mm.
So to take that strength is something I take and I hold dear.
Okay, so all right, so you are slapping the ball all over the place. You are shooting shots from 8 different places on the court. So
Mm,
I'm going to steal and call an audible here. You've made some really valid statements, some really profound statements.
mm,
In your initial definition slash quantification of manhood, you mentioned you alluded to that that has been under attack in recent
mm,
years. So let's start
mm,
there. Old school guys they fall into a couple of different categories sometimes in that pros and cons list. They
mm,
were strong, they were leader, they were head of household, they were masculine, they were, they sometimes they on the other side of the day, they were stubborn. Sometimes Papa was a Rolling Stone. They were loyal but not always faithful. There were a lot of challenges on what was identified in what is a man and what
mm,
could be carried into the generation that is our generation of men and people in the world today.
mm,
Um, and I, being at this 50 mark that we're in, uh, we sometimes, I think, are the last lingering of that era of some of those qualities. And I say
mm,
that because I think sometimes we're in that battle conflict. I think I'm finding when I talk to a lot of our peers that some of us at this point are just finding ourselves, um,
mm,
fighting the balance between what was good and bad about our fathers and our grandfathers,
Right.
and what we are concerned about our sons and grandsons.
Mm-hmm.
We're in that middle place where we're trying to just we're coming to um, the what is our purpose place in life. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
there are a lot of us who are shifting gears.
Mm-hmm.
One of our friends who I hope to interview in the near future, Dean at 50 just started a whole new career.
Mm-hmm.
And you're talking about starting a new career that's not at 35. That's not at
Mm-hmm.
30. That's not even at
Mm-hmm.
40. That's at within striking distance of um, what is considered retirement.
Mm-hmm.
And at some points are just starting to dig into what is our purpose.
Right.
Uh, I listened to a gentleman earlier, and he said a part of what is happening with men is we have lost the ability to have responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
So it's more than just purpose. That
Mm-hmm.
we are responsible for something. That we have ownership to claim responsibility for care of, for guidance to, and have therefore then lost some of our God-given purpose, to borrow your phrase.
Mm.
Um, how do you evaluate that?
I like how you started slapping the ball all over the place too. Um, there's a lot to unpack there. I would start with the fact your friend made a statement that says we have lost. Did you say the ability to have responsibility?
the the ability and the place.
Mm.
We're not sure what we're responsible for anymore.
No, that's
What
where. Yeah,
there
that's extremely accurate. That's extreme, and it's because what we have done in the fight to create equality for women, it was about elevating women, but it was also about bringing men down, so that the conversation now has become, well, a woman can do everything that a man can do, and that is meant to amplify their strength. So they made them stronger. The story is, and women are certainly strong in their own ways. I've seen my wife give birth to 3 children. All right, I can tell you, it is not just the physical strength; it is the mental strength. That we both have 3 kids, so it's the mental strength to be able to go through that process, knowing that your body is going to go through an extreme amount of excruciating pain, right?
Mhm.
That being said, every conversation that we have about men has to qualify that by talking about women, right? And
Hmm.
and so therefore what we have started to do is we started to say that, well, men feel this or men are experiencing this, yeah, but it's always been this way. And it's I dare say that what we have wanted to do is we wanted to give all of the benefits of being a man to women with none of the downside. And
Okay.
men innately know that there is a downside, but because we are men, we deal with it. That's just part of it.
Okay.
In some ways, we may not even think of it as being I'll, let me give you an example. One of the, one of the struggles that many women deal with when the whole lean in movement, right? Sheryl Sandberg started this. And so the quest for women to pursue their careers while at the same time having to wrestle with the fact that they're not able to be home with the children, things like that,
Hmm.
or to be as fully present as a mother, or to sacrifice, or definitely in the case of many women, to even sacrifice having a relationship or getting married. Well, as a man, you automatically know this, right? The idea that you can have it all, okay, if you can have it all, but you can't have it all without a price. It
Hmm.
costs you something, right?
Hmm.
To be a high value man, for instance, people look at the accolades as if you didn't have to earn them in some way, that you didn't have to spend the late night studying, that you didn't in some way have to defer the dates and all of the fun stuff that a lot of your other friends were doing to pursue this path. You had to sacrifice something. The sacrifice is always there. And so the outcomes will not always be equal because men and women are not equal in the same ways. The prices that we pay are different. The toll that it takes on us is different because we're built different to take these things. And so now, as we're opening up about this talk about mental health, and we're opening up about to talk about, protecting your peace and all of these different things, men still are not allowed to talk about the downside. Well, you're a man. So what's the downside? Well, here's the thing. If you're going to take away the benefits and not accept the responsibility or the sacrifice that is required, what you lose is the responsibility that's in there, because responsibility covers both of those things. Okay. Right? There are conversations that, and now I think that as fathers, certainly Black men are actually known statistically to be the most involved fathers that there are. We have conversations that many fathers don't necessarily have with their children. We participate, we are more present in their lives in ways that many other fathers are not. But even as a man, the responsibility means that even if I'm not present, I'm still responsible for you. Mm-hmm. I'm still responsible for the family, whether I'm there or not. And the thing that is I'm most responsible for is my presence, because the thing that we are blamed for when we are gone is our absence.
Correct.
Our father wasn't there, right? Correct. So if I'm there, I can't just be there physically. I have to be there mentally, which means that I have to have the capacity to be able to release all the other responsibilities, all the other things that would occupy my mind in order to be present in that space. I believe that women are somewhat more naturally acclimated to be able to do that. They have the ability to have multiple streams of thought going on inside their minds, right? This makes them great mothers. This makes them great friends and very empathetic, because they can be thinking about what's on the stove and so school schedule, and I got to get their clothes ready for bed, and then be able to have a conversation with a 3-year-old at the same time, right? As a man, I got to streamline all that stuff. It's down to one thing, right? But at the same time, wherever I am required to be present. And that's both a blessing and a responsibility. In many cases, it's a blessing and a burden. And so to be able to bear that is not an easy thing to do. You have to learn that. You talked about purpose. So let me bring it full circle, and then I'll let you guide us further. You may be 50 years old before you figure out how to do that. Mm-hmm. Because one of the things that we do not learn, like men learn from example. And so therefore, if the only example you've seen is external, but no one has guided you with the individual steps in the process, right? When we're born, our parents are usually already middle-aged in our minds. Mm-hmm. Now, I was born, my dad was 26, right? Mm-hmm. But my father had been taking care of his siblings since he was a kid. So my father never had a childhood. So from the time I was born, once my brothers and sisters became out of the tumbling, you can wrestle with them on the floor age. Now my father was lost in that disconnect of what it means to be a child, right? His only job now was, just keep him alive, right? And he had some maturing to do. My father and I now, as I'm in middle age and my father's in his 70s, are just now starting to have grown men conversations. Mm-hmm. Many of which I wished I could have had 30 years ago.
30 years ago.
Right. So in that space, I had to figure that out by myself, because he had to figure that out by himself. Mm-hmm. So
our fathers were not absent. They were fully present, but where we needed them present, they were not always available. And that wasn't lack of them making themselves available or trying. That was them learning in the process while we were growing. Because again, they had a different mindset of, because my father's the same. He practically raised his siblings. He recently went on a trip with the sister that's directly behind him, and they're 2 years apart. And he said from the time he could see over the table, he could look over the top of the tabletop, he went from being her sibling to being her father, because their father was no longer present. And this was their first time at 75 and 77 to actually be siblings. And so they spent several weeks traveling together, getting to know each other. And we're talking about people who are close.
Yeah.
But they spent time in the mid 70s getting to know each other. And we take that for granted. You and I talked recently about, our numbers say 50, our minds say 30. We're trying to catch on to where is the process going. We got a question here from Homemade. What is the measure of manhood, especially as social and cultural norms are shifting, and how are you all preparing your sons? Okay, so that's heavy. Okay, so and the measure of manhood. You're talking about a situation where the definitions and the expectations of roles and gender expectations and acceptance. I clearly can say that I am proud that people are finding the freedom to express themselves as who they are. Okay, that is important to me. In that growth expression, though, we are adding terms. Alpha male has been a thing for a long time, and now we're trying to address alpha females. And what does that mean in relationship to, what are the comparisons to that? Is that strong as a woman, or is that strong in place of men? A coworker said to me today, she said, I'm an alpha female, so I come at my husband strong, and that was her presentation. And I said, does he still have the voice as your partner and as what old norms would call lead of home, head of household, to express where he stood in that place? It is important to me that we have equal conversations. But I still hear a lot of women say, I want my husband to lead. I want my partner to lead. I'm wondering in this question if we lost contact with what leadership is in our homes. We've been battling for a while with what is leadership in the outside world, in the workplace, when we're walking down the street. Our strength carried on us as men, as Black men in particular. Where is our place of leadership also in the home? Because in this question, the second part of this is, how are you preparing your sons? And we know as sons that a large part of becoming a man is from watching what the men in our lives are doing.
Right.
If we're lucky enough, the father who's in our home. If we're lucky enough, our grandfathers, our uncles, but also the men who are our mentors. Are we effectively engaging in relationships that highlight strength and growth in leadership to our sons?
Yeah, you added another question on top of these two questions,
Yeah.
which I think is we're gonna do some heavy lifting tonight. Listen, let me address Homemade's first part of that question. Well, see, because she has one question and then she has a secondary question, but there's two parts to her question because what is a measure of manhood? And then she said, especially as social and cultural norms are shifting. And the thing to me is that manhood doesn't change regardless of culture or social norms.
Okay.
But the measure of it does.
Mm-hmm.
I remember Nevlon Meadows came and did a workshop for some men some years ago. And he said something that was very, 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 very powerful. He said that only men can affirm another man. What we have now in society is society, and it's two sides. So I guess we're really saying women. We have women who are deciding what a man is allowed to be, right? Now, there's nothing wrong with saying what type of man you want or what you as a woman require from a man. There's nothing wrong with that. You have the right to have whatever standard you want in your life. But when you start telling a man that he's not a man because he doesn't give you what you want, or he doesn't do it in this particular way, that's a very dangerous thing. And it's dangerous because if there is no standard and men are not allowed to affirm other men, then the men that you want that to affirm you in your womanhood are not given the capacity to be able to hold other men to the fire, right? The real breakdown is that if a man cannot challenge another man on what it means to be a man and say, this is the standard and you have to be here, then it's all over the place. So when we're talking about cultural and social norms, well, that's here in America, but in some places it hasn't shifted at all. Some places in the world, it's an absolute. And what we're seeing now is that those things are being threatened and challenged. And I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. But in order to withstand, we get to look, and it's so new in so many of these shifting norms that have happened in the last 10, 5, even 3 years, right? And so the conversations that we're having are so new, we don't know what the effect is going to be. When I look at my son and I look at other boys their age, I look at them and I feel like I was so much older than them when I was the same age. You know, I feel like at 7 years old, I felt like I was 10 or 12, you know, and I'm mature. I think I was mature, but in some ways I was immature. But it feels different when I look at them. I say, from the outside in, it just feels like a different thing. And so I think what men right now are struggling with is figuring out how to adjust the scale as we pour into them what we know from experience they will need down the line.
Okay.
How soon do we give it to them? How heavily do we pour this on, right? How soon do we strip away the innocence and say, it's time to put the toys away. You got to start doing man stuff now, right? So to the second part of our question, how are we preparing our sons? I think that we're still navigating that. I do think the one thing that we're able to do is we're able to have more conversations like this one so that we can start examining those things. You know, you and I, Herman, were just talking about the things that we didn't get from our fathers earlier in our lives. And I think one thing that we have been trying to do is to give that to them sooner, not stuff, but us, not things, but thoughts and conversations and our presence in a way that we could be present to their emotions. You know, studies show that young boys are actually much more sensitive emotionally than girls are at the same age. So between 3 and 7 and 8, boys actually experience the world in a heightened sensitivity. And so I think we've often thought the reverse. And so we've actually stifled a lot of that emotional development for boys at a very crucial age. So when we look at a man earlier and we think, well, when he's 25 and 30 and 45 and 50, why isn't he expressing himself emotionally? We repress that so early on, right? And we do it in many subtle ways, many subtle ways, right? The way that we'll hug our daughters when they cry, we might pat our son on the back. And we think that's being emotionally supportive. He's not free to be able to fall apart the same way his sisters can. How do we allow for that? Right? Because safety, one of the things that I think that many women are craving from men when they talk about leadership is they really want safety. They want a world where they feel protected.
Correct.
But a man cannot give you something he has never had. So if you have never let him feel safe to fall apart, he cannot offer that to you, because to him that looks completely different. To him that looks like shutting out emotion, shutting down emotion. That looks like avoiding the situation. That may look like violence in terms of protection. I'll go fight somebody for you, but I can't be here with you while you cry, because I don't know how to do that, because no one's ever held me when I cried. No one's ever told me that it was going to be okay. No one's ever wiped my tears and said, you're still a man even though you cry, when I was 5 or 6. Now you're telling me at 45, well, why don't you ever shed tears? Why don't you ever cry? You know, safety is a learned condition. Babies cry when they're born because they want to know, hey, I was in this warm place for 9 months. I come out here and all hell is breaking loose. There's lights and there's noise and there's yelling and there's screaming. Oh, I'm the one screaming, you know. So they're looking for that comfort. And so they learn that over time. And psychologist Gabor Mate, he talks about the fact that how emotional support actually increases intelligence in children over time. So the more that they are emotionally supported and shown physical love and safety when they are young, it translates into actual intellectual intelligence over time. And what we're doing is we're kind of dumbing down men from the emotional standpoint. That's been experienced a lot of them. And I think that we are trying to rectify that with our sons in this age. But it's a learning process, and it's a steep learning curve for many of us, because we're having to navigate that and manufacture the blueprint or manufacture the instruction manual out of thin air.
So let's tap into the adult version of that, because you made a post, and I'm sharing your personal business. you made a post at your anniversary that that expressed the your what I understood as your recognition of the delicacy of your relationship, how fragile a relationship can be, especially when you've taken for granted where things are. As men, comfortable is an unfortunate part of our makeup. We get comfortable with a format. We see things as going this way, and everything is smooth, and the house isn't on fire, so it isn't bad. And a lot of men show up to divorce court not knowing why they're there, because they lost connection. They lost the ability to recognize that they did not continue to add value, to grow, to bring new. They got inside the comfort box. And you look up and realize, I don't know how to deal with in comparison to what you said, I don't know how to deal with the conflict of this moment or these moments. I don't know how to address your loneliness, because I don't even know how to recognize my own loneliness. My job is to gain, to pay for, to and in a world that it feels like, Fred, that where a lot of our responsibilities, going back to the initial word, is being taken away from us. Um, there are people who can do this better than you, or we have to, you can't earn enough, or you can't keep this
Mhm.
job, or this relationship is broken down, or I don't want you to see the kids, or a lot of the things that we feel we have to be responsible for. When those things are removed from us, we are losing place,
Mhm.
and we are. I think a part of that goes back to your statement that we need to get back to having connections outside our homes that help to build us up so that we can be more fluid in our homes. Uh,
Mhm. Mhm.
um, a report I read recently said that as men get older, they have less friends.
100%. Yeah.
And if you
Yeah.
have less friends and you have less people for whom you can help hold you accountable, for whom you can find mentorship, then and if in addition to that, we also then are afraid to seek therapy and counselors, and then we're in our heads.
Mhm. Mhm.
We aren't talking to our partners, our wives. We aren't having friends to go out with and blow off some steam. We don't have any hobbies. We don't talk to a therapist, and we are shrinking away from a world that we don't even know we're shrinking away from. How do you
Mhm.
how do you mm, finding the balance of being a good partner, and that seems almost inevitable to a loss.
There's a couple of things that you said that I think I want to highlight. One, you talked about shrinking away from a world. I think that I think that men in general feel feel this gap where they are shrinking away from the world that doesn't even notice that they're gone.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't mean this in a generic sense. I mean that the things about them that are withering and dying inside of them, they can't explain, they can't articulate it. They don't know what it is. But when they try to express it, nobody cares.
Hmm.
Because the other part about what you said is that I don't think it's so much that men have had a responsibility taken away from them. I think that people still want them to have the responsibility, but without the authority.
Hmm.
So they're calling it privilege, right? So and we're comparing the privilege as if, well, everything, all the good things that men have, women should be able to have, right? And we talked about that there's a cost to that, right? But with responsibility does have to come some authority. You can't give me a responsibility and not give me the authority to execute it. And so what happens is that now I get all the blame, but I have none of the power to change it.
Hmm.
It doesn't mean that we've always gotten it right in the past. And I say we generically as men, right? There are different lanes of manhood that have carried this torch in different ways. We've all dropped the ball in some of those ways.
Mm-hmm.
Specifically when it comes to marriage. And I've seen too many of my friends, my male friends, get divorced, right? I've seen them go through this. And for the majority of them, it was their wives that filed for divorce. You hear the conversation come up because you kind of alluded to it, right? They stopped growing, they stopped developing or whatever. Yes, there's a comfort level there, but also the connection is, I think, is being lost. And I think also there's a message out there for that is conflicting. So for women on the one hand, they're saying, sister, you deserve better,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then they're turning over and looking at their husbands and saying, well, I deserve better than you because you're not giving me what I need at this point. The conflicting message for men is that you're not good enough. You got to do more to measure up. When yesterday it was good enough, but now it's not today. And there's no blueprint for how I be more enough, better, right? If I was an attorney before and I had this track and I'm making money, we're paying the bills, we're raising the kids. And then all of a sudden, because you have higher aspirations, because people have told you should assume certain leadership, I should be ascending at the equal pace or outpacing you. Because here's the secret. Women want to admire their husbands, right? The problem is that when you only admire his accomplishments and not his character. Because there are many good men who are not necessarily the most ambitious. Or they could have been more ambitious if they only known that you believed that he had the capacity.
Or at the best level of ambition they're going to be. They are at the level of success. And we're not talking about shortchanging. We're talking about they are great at doing what they are. Success is not how great the job is. It's how well they enjoy or put in the effort at doing what it is they're doing where they are.
Yeah. Yeah. We've become so superficial in our measurement of success, right? Because in a social media age, it's really about what other people will think about your success, right? We tell people you get to, find your inner happiness. At the same time, inner happiness, I can't post my inner happiness on Instagram, right? If me, and I'll tell you this, Andy Stanley once talked about it. I loved it. He talked about how men have a nothing box. We all have these different boxes in our heads, and men have our nothing box. Our nothing box is our favorite box to go and play in because there's nothing there. We get to sit on the couch with a cold drink, watch basketball, and do nothing. And we work super hard all week for that 2 or 3 hour window or that Sunday afternoon in the fall when we get to do nothing because we earn the right. And now what people are saying is you can't do nothing because that's not being a man. It's not enough. And so now they translate that nothing box to our entire lives. And you said it, right? It's not about the desire to continue and grow and improve. But sometimes if you're already good at being you and you're telling me that being who I am is not good enough, why would I want to be more of myself? That would mean that I would only try harder. And how many times have I heard this, right? I tried, but nothing I did was ever good enough. So there's this invisible, unreachable ideal that's out there. And it's funny because now we're in this space where we can have these conversations online. And when I was in grad school or out of college, we used to have these potlucks with singles after church, and there'd be 30 or 40 of us in a room. And we're having exact same conversations today that we were having back then. Mm-hmm. And I would hear these young ladies making these same complaints. I want a man who makes 6 figures. He needs to be doing this. And I would tell them, I was like, less than 10% of guys are going to make 6 figures, statistically speaking. And then you're talking about black men. If that's what you want, that's a fraction of that. So you're talking about 15% of those 10%. It's a very small amount of people. And it's just because statistically speaking, most people never get to that level, no matter how hard they work, or it takes them 20, 30 years. Right? So there's a particular job path, career path that you have to take, which takes a particular mindset. But with that comes consequences and sacrifices, because a man of that caliber is going to demand something in return for his fealty, for his protection, for his provision. for his presence. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, right? If I buy a Range Rover instead of a Kia, I'm demanding more for what I'm paying, right? But there's a greater expectation on the other end, right? And so it's not an easy thing to navigate because we're in uncharted territory, and people are making these. Here's the thing that's frustrating for me, I think, and frustrating for men in general, is that people are making these claims with absolute certainty, with absolute. There's no wiggle room. This is what you have to be, or else. Or we cancel you, or we forget about you, we leave you by the wayside. And we're seeing it in our teenage and young adult boys who are there in despair, man, because they don't see a way out of the pit. From where they are to where they have to be is so far. And if they don't have anyone to guide them, how are they supposed to get there? All they have is Instagram, and maybe they have some influencer who's gonna show them the way, but they don't know. And I've been to Eric Thomas is a church, a place of change that he's started here in Atlanta, and so he's here once or twice a month. And I remember I went one time and I was seeing all of these young men. Women talk about where are the men in the church, right? There were so many young men, and I'm seeing them walk in with notebooks and pens because they are literally looking for the instructions on how to figure this crap out.
There was a saying, and you still hear people say it every once in a while. If you have to tell me that you're a man, then you're not a man.
Right.
But there's no clear-cut definition on what that is. There's no clear outline on what makes you a man. We have societal norms that have shifted and come and gone. You didn't open the door for me, but I don't need you. There's you're too masculine, but you're not a man enough. There's that battle that constantly goes on between what helps to define where you are as a man. What I've tried to share with my sons who are at that early 20 age point in life, and you remember that, you remember that phase, is be the best you want to be. That you define for yourself what is success, what is accomplishment, and the expectations that I want for them to have for themselves. I want to be as realistic as the expectations that they accept from other people.
Yeah.
Having a beard, having a mustache doesn't make you a man. We all know that. We started getting them at 12, and every man tell me, oh, that little hair on you, that didn't make you a man. Being able to procreate doesn't make you a man. But having said that, earning six figures doesn't make you a man. There are a lot of childish, highly rich people, because the standard of a man, I think, is someone, in my opinion, and again, I think it's subjective to some degree, is someone who puts forth his best effort at not only caring for those around him, but at some point realizes he needs to care for himself. I think that's a lost factor at times, is the self-care part. If we can't take care of ourselves, we are useless to the people around us. I have been openly rejecting this work till you die concept, and I don't just mean going to work. I mean the burning and the protecting and the grinding and the until young lady said, my father, he did anything for us, and he went in, and our father died of a heart attack at 50 plus years old. And I was just like, okay, that's manly. That's societal manly, but he didn't know when to push back and say, you know,
Yeah.
I got to breathe. You know, the the foot on our neck, the knee on our neck is not always the bad guy. Sometimes it's the expectations of what I need to do to carry this far and to go that far. Um, you know, I and again, when you don't have a place with which to have somebody to say, "Look, bro, I need you to stand still a minute. Sit down in this chair next to me and be quiet." Man, let's
Mm-hmm.
play some ball. No, just sit down right here, bro, and be quiet. Sit down a minute. Drink this glass of water. Put that burger down. That's the second beer, bro. That's enough. I mean, to have someone with who can say, protect your whole self. Um, I think you and I are blessed to say that we have partners who call us out and say,
Mm-hmm.
hey, you're not taking care of yourself. Hey, you're not working to advance yourself. But what about those people who don't have that format?
Yeah.
Growing into the best you is an individual thing in and of itself. No matter your gender, your background, your expectations, being the best you is about, I believe, finding a space in which you feel you bloom, you
Mm-hmm.
flourish, you grow. Um, and doing that as a man in a space where that isn't always that term isn't always acceptable is a continued challenge. Um, I think one of the things is using a phrase somebody had out is adjusting your ignorance.
Mm-hmm.
Be okay with saying I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
We I got to do this and I got to do that and I got to do this. What do you want to do? I don't know. How you gonna get
Mm-hmm.
there? I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
What's next? I don't know.
Yeah.
And giving yourself the freedom to then dig in and figure out what that means, because I don't
Mm-hmm.
know does not suggest always laziness or irresponsibility or lack of motivation. Sometimes it just means humanity. This is just where I am. I'm in an empty space and I don't know. Life did not do what I expected to do, and I don't know. And building support around that person so that they can then find new roots.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
if you pull a plant out of the ground by its roots, it's not dead unless you
Right.
don't replant it. It
Right.
just it just means it's misplaced. Its roots are still intact. Its ability to grow are still intact. The soil in which it was growing was either bad or needed to be moved or needed to be upgraded or needed a larger space. It's not dead. It's just uprooted. And
Mm-hmm.
I think due to the country that we live in, the times that we live in, the history of being a black man, we've been uprooted a lot.
Mm.
And we aren't tilling the soil for each other to replant ourselves and continue to grow. Um,
No, that's a great point. No, that point right there is a great point, because especially the way that I see such contention between men and women these days, the dating market and in marriages, right? Because what the shifting norms have done is they have pitted men and women against each other, as in we are competitors and not partners in moving
mhm,
forward, right? So and so even in the culture wars, the conversation is we need to go back to the way things used to be, and women are saying we don't want to go back there because that's what was horrible. What we need to do is we need to do things differently now. And what I'm saying is that what we really need to do is we need to figure out the best way forward, right? How do we both get to get the best out of each other moving forward? And part of that is that you can't tear men down to lift women up. I also think that your conversation about being the best version of you, I don't think any man can fully be his best self unless he is married and has a family. Now, I understand that not everybody can have kids, different dynamics may exist, but in the form of relationships, in the form of relationship, that is where a man gets polished. The sharp edges get polished, where his muscles get refined, right? The muscles of communication, of empathy, of being present, of being still, of feeling his emotions and not allowing them to rule him, not allowing his impulses and his urges to drive him, right? To not be driven by his insecurity, but the need of those around him to provide security and stability. Those things are real. You talked about how you're navigating the conversations with your sons. I think for me, in talking to my son, it's how do I communicate that there are certain values that you want to embody, right? Let these things be your character, integrity, being a man of your word. Knowing how to take care of yourself is part of being an adult, right? But knowing how to take care of yourself and others is part of being a man. Because that is the expectation, right? People just expect you to know how to do this. And to your point, we're not always allowed to say we don't know. We're not allowed to say, I don't even know where to start. There is this expectation at some amorphous point in your life, you're going to be a man now. And so you got to do this. Why aren't you a man? I don't know. When was I supposed to be one? I've been asking people for years. I'll never forget. My guy, Benji Cone, we were walking somewhere, whatever. I think I was 13. We were like 13 years old. And he said, we were having something like came up about being a man. And he was like, he said, you got hair on your balls, don't you? You're a man then, right? Like literally, we don't know. Like, there's all these different stages, things that happen to our bodies, things that happen to us and we start to question, well, am I a man now? You know? And we're waiting for someone to tell us. This is why it wasn't left to chance in ancient civilizations for centuries. There was a rite of passage. Yesterday you were a boy. Today you are a man. There's a ceremony that affirms this. There's an outline that tells you this is what you're preparing for, right? They trained for that. They trained to be a man, to pass this test. And then they were affirmed for it. And they knew what the expectations were going forward. And now those expectations are changing, right? And so here's the challenge. The challenge is that, Herman, you and I can prepare our sons to be men, and they can still go out into the world, and there will be somebody that tells them, you're not a man unless you do this. And that's where the confusion comes, because when I was told this is the bar, and you're saying the bar is the floor.
Right. And trust me, even at our age, we can attest to that, because we're still trying to avoid people calling us boy, directly or indirectly.
Herman, you said this earlier, and it made me think that there are men that I know now that are 50 and 60 years old that still don't feel like a man.
And I know some 15-year-olds that are grown ass men.
Yeah.
And some of them, unfortunately, because they've been thrown into that, they've been tossed in that well. They have to, and unfortunately, that is the hard way to become a man. To be tossed into manhood versus to be raised into manhood, and the piece. The significance of what you said about the rituals, I think as Black people, that is one of the things that has been taken away from us, being removed from our homeland, is the
Mm-hmm.
rituals associated with today you are a man.
Yeah.
And we've replaced that with ability. I can work. I can work this much. I can have kids. I can have this many kids. I can ability. The ability to do something then says you're a man. Well, a 12-year-old can have a ton of kids. That doesn't make him a man. A 15-year-old can get a job and work as many hours as is legally possible. That doesn't make him a man.
Mm-hmm.
There is a cultural and community investment in these young people that blossoms our desire to not only take care of ourselves but to take care of others. That was a strong
Yeah.
point you made, because that is a significant difference. You can take care. There's a whole lot of people who can take care of themselves, even if it's by the skin of their teeth. They can take care of
Right.
themselves, but
Right.
don't have the ability to expand that care outside of themselves in a way that is beneficial to the people around them and still healthy for them as well. And I think
Right.
that's the
Right.
balance.
What one of the things you said, what we are hearing, and we've been hearing this for a couple of generations now, is the independent woman, right? And I want you to think about the contrast and what that is, because we're talking about it. A man has the expectation that he is supposed to be able to take care of himself and at least his woman. Himself, a man takes care of his kids, right? We say this. But an independent woman is supposed to be able to take care of herself, right? And this is not a knock towards women, but this is talking about what the conversation does to the boys. Because what happens is, I don't want to out this person, but I remember I was having a conversation about a guy with a guy, and he was saying how his mother was raising him, telling him, you need to be able to take care of a woman, take care of your family. And she turned right around to his sister and said, you need to make sure you never need a man. So he was being trained for a role
He could never
that
accomplish.
he can never fulfill.
Yeah.
You're literally, it's the essence of paying $250,000 to go to college and get a degree. And when you graduate and walk across the stage, they tell you, here's your degree, your diploma. These jobs are no longer available.
It's similar to a scenario when Dee and I were dating, as we were moving towards the married life and making those decisions. And I said, I want to be able to take care of you. And she said, I can take care of myself. And we had that conversation for a long time, because that's a common conversation. I want to be able to take care of you. I can take care of myself. And one day I said, but if I can't provide for you, and she said, oh, and I didn't catch the nuance, because a young woman being raised hears, you can take care of yourself. He needs to be able to provide for you. They're two different terms. A young man gets the message, you need to be able to take care of her, because if you want to provide for her, same message. For us, the word is synonymous. For them, those two phrases are two different things. And so we come into this with the lack of cohesion on what going back to it again, our responsibility is. What is my purpose? What am I supposed to be doing here? Unfortunately, a lot of men fall into that default of, what do you want to do? The young lady I was talking to earlier today, she gets that. She said, I made this available. I blocked off this time so that he could plan. I said, I'm doing this so that all you have to do is that. And when we got to that point, I'd done mine and he did nothing. And when we got to it, he said, well, what do you want to do? And I said, does he often feel like what he suggests is not what you want to do? And she said, no, I'm always amenable to whatever, because I don't care. I said, it may not be you, but somewhere along the way, he learned his opinion brings conflict, or his opinion is going to be shot down. So it's just easier to say, let's do what you want to do. It's a bad approach. I'm first to admit it. But
Well, I don't know that. I don't know. What I'm hearing just in that is that maybe he doesn't care either. The only thing he wants to do is to please her. And so and men, we're direct, we're logical. I want to do the thing that makes her happy because I don't care where we eat. I don't have a particular preference. And I'd rather for her to go and be happy, because the worst thing I want to do is to pick someplace and then she's miserable the whole time. So,
but let's go back. Let's go back. Again, I know we're veering, but let's go back, because we talked earlier about decisiveness and we talked about leadership. And
right.
I think these are examples of sometimes how we feel like we've lost our leadership.
Yeah.
Once upon a time, we were the deciders, to use George W. We were the deciders. And we're not the deciders anymore, which brings a level of equality and balance to the situation. But then there's a lack of practice of being deciders.
Right.
And so when decisiveness is necessary, we're empty vessels. We're blank stares and glazed over eyes, because the practice of making the decision.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What's the balance? So then what's the balance? Let's close with that. How do we find the balance between being a man in the world who has balance?
Mm-hmm.
What's the direction towards balance in our lives? Because I think balance is the key to being the best man we can be. So what do you think are the top 3 things we should do towards moving towards balance?
All right. So I'm going to throw a monkey wrench in it and just
do it.
One of the things that we talk about when we're working with our clients is the fact that balance is an illusion.
Okay.
Balance is the art of falling and catching yourself over and over and over again. If you're standing on a ball and you're trying to balance, right, you're really falling and adjusting and falling and adjusting. We've tried to apply this to life, but in reality, it's not about equality, which is what we think it would mean. Well, you just have, because if you're baking a cake, you're a chef. You don't have equal parts sugar, equal parts salt, equal parts flour, equal parts eggs, right? You need enough in the particular areas to be able to create a particular effect, right? It's not equal parts frosting and equal parts cake, all right?
Correct.
And so, but we try to do this in our lives. Well, it needs to be here and here. You're not here enough. And I think for men, we especially feel that. Like, if I'm here all the time, I can't be there, right? So you got to decide where you want me to be. What really is being required of us is to focus on how to be present. And the hard part about being present is that you have to be okay being where you are. You have to learn to be okay with being still. Stillness is not laziness. Stillness does not mean stopping, right? And so you have to be able to exude the fact that even when I am standing still, I'm still in forward motion, right? So to capture the aspect of leadership that you were talking about, you talked about the 3 things. I don't have 3 things for balance. What I do think is that it is a recipe, and you get to figure out what the recipe is for you. When it talks about leadership, I think different people define what they want by what they have lacked in the past. So what they're requiring of us as men is saying, well, my daddy didn't do this, so this is what you should be doing, because he wasn't there to give me what I wanted. Therefore, you should do that for me.
Hmm.
Well, maybe, but maybe you didn't need that thing anyway. But what you really needed was him to be present, or what you really needed was this. I don't know. I can't tell you what you need from me, but I do know that when it comes to being a leader, it's not my job always to decide where we eat. It's my job to make sure that we eat.
Mm-hmm.
And so part of being a good leader is learning how to delegate responsibility, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
I have to know which part of my mind is going to, if I have to occupy my mind with all of this, I've had these conversations with my wife, right? She's like, can you just, what, like, look, this is not a good use of my mental space to be spending a lot of time worrying about this. And I will make contributions where I can because I understand. She makes the menus. Sometimes she'll ask me, what do you want to eat? Well, I don't know what I want to eat next week because I'm not there yet. But I can give you suggestions based on what we've had in the past that I know is good that you're right. Great. So I can do that from time to time. And she will. She'll ask me for one or two things, right? So being decisive in the context of what we're doing, right?
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes the decisiveness is to say that's not my strength. It's not my area. We'll delegate that. I will provide for this to happen. So that you don't have to worry about it happening, but looking to me to always make the call. Right. At the end of the day, the final call is mine. The final call is that we're getting in the car, we're going to eat. Now you can say where you want. And if you don't know where you want to go, then we're going to go. But when we go, don't be mad because we went there. Right. Because the thing is, it's not a qualitative thing. It's quantitative. Did we accomplish what we went to? We went to eat. We did. Now we may not enjoy the experience, but next time we won't go there. If you have a better experience to suggest, then you can do that. And we're just using this as an example.
Great.
But ultimately, what we're saying is that leadership can't be a moving target. Manhood can't be a moving target, right? The challenge for men is that once you get into it, you recognize the target is always moving, and you have to get better at hitting it.
Mm-hmm.
But the target can't be your manhood itself. The
Mm-hmm.
target has to be the outcome that you're creating for the ones that you love, right? What is the life that I am called to provide? What is the purpose that I'm here to fulfill? And in my role in the family, how am I providing? How am I leading? How am I guiding? How am I nurturing in the way that I am uniquely qualified to do? When we start merging those two roles together, and when I talk about roles, I'm not talking about the duties, because you cook. I don't cook in my home, but that's okay, right? The duties are less important than the presence and the doing, the sharing, the growing together. And I think that as men, we have that opportunity to be able to continue to rewrite this narrative, not just in our favor, right? Because this isn't a competition. It's all battle of the sexes things that we have going on, this culture clash of men and women, both externally and internally of marriage. I think it doesn't do any of us any good. What's better is to figure out how we are both uniquely shaped as men and women to be able to support each other in our strengths and our flaws, to be able to create optimal outcomes. Optimal being the highest possible, right? Because there's minimal and there's optimal. There's minimal, there's maximal, and there's optimal. Minimal outcome is we get there, but there's I'll give this example. A minimal outcome is that you're going on a trip with your family and you get there as fast as possible, but you get 4 speeding tickets, you almost get in a wreck, and your blood pressure is up, right? A maximal outcome is that No, that's a maximal outcome. A minimal outcome would be that you get there, but you get there so slowly that you miss all the festivities. You lose all the gas, you get lost along the way. That's a minimal outcome. A maximal outcome is get there as fast as possible, but there's way too much risk involved.
Mm-hmm.
An optimal outcome is that you get there at the appointed time to do what you were supposed to do safely and with everybody in the right frame of mind to be able to enjoy the experience. And what we have now is the opportunity to be able to create better relationships and a better environment for the women that we love, the children that we are raising, and the community of brothers that are around us, to be able to fully experience what it means to be a man and to realize that for other men, for other people in our worlds.
Ladies and gentlemen, Fred Bussey. My brother, I appreciate that. I appreciate that. It is always an honor. And I am honored that you spent the time with us today just to kind of talk as men in front of the world and hopefully create a conversation that we can extend. We are responsible to and responsible for each other. I believe that. And we need to, I think, tap more into each other, our similarities and our differences, and recreate the community. I believe as men, it is our responsibility to make that happen. And that our loved ones will follow if we lead appropriately. I thank you all for all those who were with us today, who spent time with us, who joined us in the chat. If you come to us from the future, when you go into the comments later, hit hashtag replay, and let us know you're here and throw your comments at us. Fred can pop in here at any time and respond back to those comments as well. We are growing as people. We are growing as men. It is, as we've tried to express today, an ongoing situation. Our fathers are still growing. and that reality sometimes can be scary, but is also encouraging because it helps us know that there's a future to continue to work to and through. Fred's information will be in the description if you want to reach out for him for consultation. We have information that will be there if you want to do consultations with D and I as well. I am Herman. This is H&D Abroad. We appreciate you hanging out with us on this Man Monday. Blessings on y'all. We'll see you next time.